At least two NASCAR Cup Series teams are looking to expand in 2025, and NASCAR will not be buying Long Beach. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just show them those really quickly. First, going to take a look at a couple paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple of days. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Justin Allgaier's 2024 Hellman scheme. I like this scheme a lot. I love the colors. Ryan Williams does an incredible job with design for Junior Motorsports. I think this looks phenomenal, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing on the racetrack throughout 2024. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ty Dillon's 2024 Chevy accessory scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Richmond. I think his scheme is solid in my opinion. It's not absolutely amazing, but I think it's decent. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at Richmond. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Anthony Alfredo's 2024 Dude Wipe scheme that we're going to see in a couple weeks at Talladega. I absolutely love this paint scheme. Very similar to Anthony Alfredo's Dude Wipe schemes that we've seen over the years, but I think it absolutely looks amazing and spectacular. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Dale Jr.'s 2024 Hellman scheme that we're going to see at Bristol later this year. I absolutely love this paint scheme. The colors look incredible. Another phenomenal, one of the best paint schemes for sure I've seen so far in 2024. I think it looks overall absolutely amazing. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Josh Bilicki's 2024 Milestone Plumbing scheme that I believe we're going to see this weekend or in a few weeks at Texas Motor Speedway. I think the scheme is pretty solid for sure. I like the orange, and I also like the yellow and the other colors on it. I think it looks pretty good in my opinion. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Lane Ray's 2024 GOC Infinity scheme that we're going to see at Martinsville next week. Solid paint scheme in my opinion. I love the blue. I like everything about it. I think it looks pretty good overall, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Richmond purse money. Every time we have a NASCAR Cup, Xfinity Series, or Truck Series race, Bob Pockets puts out the purse money for the event. And according to Bob, for the Cup race, it's $7,886,627. And for the Xfinity race, it's $1,456,191. That's a decent purse money for the NASCAR Xfinity Series. That's gone up a little bit from last year. And the Cup Series, I think, is about where it was last year as well. Overall, I think that is some pretty solid and good purse money for the weekend. The winner probably will get about $500,000 to almost $1 million for the event. So overall, a lot of money going to the teams and the charter organizations as well. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Senx. As it was announced yesterday that Senx is going to sponsor Rich Hills Racing and Austin Dillon for select races throughout the 2024 season. Senx, one of the biggest tool companies in the United States, joins NASCAR, I believe, for the first time. I think it's a really great partnership for the team. I think the paint scheme does look pretty good as well. We already talked about Boot Barn coming in and sponsoring this team, and now Austin Dillon does have a new sponsor. Say what you want to say about Austin Dillon, how good of a driver he is or not a good driver. It's good to see that Austin Dillon continues to pick up some new sponsorship. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Mobil 1. As it was announced yesterday that Mobil 1 is going to be sponsoring Victory Lane starting this week at Richmond International Raceway and takes over the sponsorship role for Victory Lane. We've had Budweiser worked on that. We've had Gatorade be the sponsor of Victory Lane. And now you've got Mobil 1, who's been expanding their partnerships in NASCAR with teams like 2311 Racing and Toyota as well, and even SHR as well. And now they're expanding into sponsoring Victory Lane. I think it's cool to see that Mobil 1's going to be doing this. Obviously, we don't get to see Victory Lane as much nowadays on TV. But I think it's really awesome and phenomenal to see that Mobil 1 is going to be sponsoring Victory Lane. And we'll see if they ever decide to show Victory Lane going forward and in the future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Cameron Marlo. As it was announced yesterday afternoon that Cameron Marlo will be performing a pre-race concert during the Coke 600 weekend on Saturday. Cameron Marlo, for those who don't know, did the national anthem for the North Wilkesboro All-Star Race, and Cameron Marlo competed on The Voice and also has some pretty big hits on Spotify and YouTube in the industry for country as well. I think Cameron Marlo will put on a really good concert. Hopefully people do go out there. I know people probably don't know who he is, but he is someone who's coming up through the ranks of country music, and I think his music overall is pretty solid and pretty good, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Williamsburg Contracting. As it was announced yesterday afternoon that Williamsburg Contracting is going to sponsor Matt DiBenedetto this weekend at Richmond in the 38 car. Matt DiBenedetto will be making his Xfinity Series season debut this weekend at Richmond International Race Week. Is going to run 5 races with Viking Motorsports with the hope to run more races throughout the 2024 season. And now Williamsburg Contracting, which I think is from the Virginia and Richmond area, he's now getting the chance and opportunity to have that sponsorship for this event. It's good to see Matt DiBenedetto has some sponsorship funding for this event, and glad to see that Williamsburg Contracting is going to be sponsoring him. I think it's really good for him, and glad to see that he'll have the chance and opportunity to get sponsored by this company for this event. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Xfinity Series race at Iowa. Now, we've already talked about the fact that Hy-Vee is going to be expanding their partnership with NASCAR and sponsoring the NASCAR Xfinity Series event at Iowa Speedway. But it's also announced that the Xfinity Series race at Iowa has also actually sold out. When is the last time that Xfinity Series race sold out? Like 15 years ago? I think this is absolutely huge. I know that Iowa Speedway doesn't have Daytona 500 stands or Daytona National Speedway stands, but there's still going to be nearly 40,000 people that are going to be showing up. And the reason is because there is a lot of hype around Iowa Speedway. There's a lot of people going to be going to that race. I think the race is actually going to be fun as well, especially with the different tire they might end up using for the event. There's going to be some testing happening there really soon. But I think it's incredible to see that a NASCAR Xfinity Series race has sold out. I think it's very rare for that to happen. So for it to happen, I think is not only phenomenal, but I think it's incredible overall as well, to be honest with you. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about NASCAR Draft House. As it was announced and reported by Adam Stern that NASCAR is getting back into the brick and mortar restaurant business for the first time in over a decade with a NASCAR Draft House in my home city of St. Louis. This is going to be at St. Louis Airport. Obviously, St. Louis has been doing a lot of work for NASCAR, and they've been working with NASCAR for a very, very long time. Obviously, they've been building up around the area. We know the Bommarito Group really promotes the NASCAR events there. The gateway races always sell out, and now to see that they're bringing back a brick-and-mortar business for NASCAR kind of stuff in general, I think is pretty awesome to see, and it's something that I'm definitely going to go check out here in the not-so-distant future. I think this is really just cool to see. NASCAR is obviously growing once again as a brand and as a company. I think this is really huge to see the NASCAR Draft House is going to be coming in. I think this is pretty cool, and nonetheless glad to see the NASCAR Draft House will be around starting here in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ryan Vargas. As it was announced yesterday or a couple days ago that Ryan Vargas will be driving a 32 for Jordan Anderson Racing this weekend at Richmond. Ryan Vargas already made a select start earlier this year at Phoenix International Raceway. Unfortunately, their car caught on fire, which Fox never mentioned during their broadcast. But it will be crew chief by Mike Harmon, so I believe that Mike Harmon Racing will be preparing this car, but it will be under the Jordan Anderson Racing banner. The hope is for this team to do good enough. Obviously, this team's been struggling a lot of events this year outside of that really good run that Austin Green had last week and the run that Jordan Anderson did have at Daytona. This team will be looking to run really, really good this weekend, but honestly, I'm not expecting much, unfortunately, for Ryan Vargas this weekend. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about pit boxes. Now, it was reported by Bob Pockers and multiple other reporters in the industry that NASCAR is putting limits on where teams can put adhesive chemicals in their pit box, as apparently teams with opening at the pit box have been sprayed and it's been getting extremely sticky. There's a new rule coming into play. Obviously, now these teams try to put some sticky chemicals on their pit boxes so they can go ahead and have a little bit of advantage and these cars don't slide coming into pit road, because if you slide into pit road, you can mess those tires up, especially like at a super speedway where you really don't want to change tires because tire wear is not as big a thing on super speedway tracks, maybe outside of Atlanta Motor Speedway. You want to have that adhesive chemical down to where it's not going to cause those tires to wear as quickly as possible. I think this is a good decision, though. I think that they're making the right call here because you don't want basically drivers you slide into their pit boxes, among other things. I think this is the right decision, the right call for NASCAR, and I think they're doing a good thing here by putting a little bit of limit in regards to pit boxes and adhesive chemicals. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Jeff Bodine and Jeff Gordon. As it was officially announced yesterday that Jeff Gordon and Jeff Bodine are going to be given the command for the NASCAR Cup Series race at Martinsville next week. This obviously is a very important week for Hendrick Motorsports, as this will be the 40-year anniversary of Hendrick Motorsports' first career NASCAR Cup Series win, with Jeff Bodine scoring that win in the number 5 car, which saved Hendrick Motorsports from shutting down. Had Jeff Bodine not been able to win that race at Martinsville Speedway, Hendrick Motorsports would not be around to this day. So Jeff Bodine is absolutely deserving of this honor, in my opinion, to give the command at Martinsville. He won, I think, a couple races at this racetrack as well. And Jeff Gordon is one of the most successful drivers in the history of NASCAR. And his last career win came at Martinsville as well, and won a lot of races at this track. I think it's incredible that both of them are going to give the command. Hoping they bring the energy and excitement, but trust me, I think they are going to be able to bring that energy and excitement, and I think it's exciting to see that they are going to be giving the command for the Cup Series race at Martinsville. Pretty exciting stuff overall, to be perfectly honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Logan Bearden. As it was officially announced on Wednesday that Logan Bearden is going to be making his NASCAR Xfinity Series debut this weekend at Richmond International Raceway, driving the 6 for JD Motorsports. Logan Bearden, to my understanding, has made about 12 or 13 Nat ARCA starts and has had some decent performances, but not absolutely amazing performances. But he does have a lot of experience on short tracks, which is the big reason why he's getting this chance and opportunity with JD Motorsports. Now, what are my realistic expectations of Logan Bearden? Personally, I'm not expecting him to set the world on fire. It's just that I don't trust the equipment with JD Motorsports. They really haven't shown the overall pace and speed over the course of the last couple of years. So I think that sadly is going to affect his performance this weekend. We'll see how he ends up doing, how he can perform. It's a great opportunity for him, don't get me wrong, but I'm not expecting him to set the world on fire this weekend at Richmond International Raceway. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Logan Bearden. As it was announced yesterday or 2 days ago that Logan Bearden is going to drive the 14 for SS Greenlight Racing and make his Xfinity Series debut this weekend at Richmond International Raceway. Logan Bearden, for those who don't know, I think has been competing in the Trans Am Series and other series as well, and has also made a couple select NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series starts for AM Racing a couple years ago. I think he did get a couple respectful finishes and was able to qualify for every race that he's been able to make. Now, this 14 car is actually showing some pace and speed at times with drivers like J.J. Yeley and even Daniel Suarez as well. Now, realistically, I think that Logan Bearden's goal is to get a top 30 in this event, which I think realistically with the speed that this car does have at times, I do think he's got a chance and opportunity to potentially get a top 30. I'm excited for Logan. I've liked where he's come from. I think he's done a pretty good job up to this point. I think he will do a pretty good job with SS Greenlight Racing this weekend at Richmond, hopefully. Just complete as many laps as possible, get some experience, and then maybe it could open up the chance and opportunity for him to go ahead and race in more races in the future. It's a great opportunity for him. Hopefully he can make the best of it in his NASCAR Xfinity Series debut this weekend at Richmond International Raceway. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Moto GP. As it was reported by Adam Stern on Wednesday that F1 owner Liberty Media is closing in on a $4.4 billion deal to buy Moto GP. And probably by this point you're watching this, that deal has already been finalized. Now, Liberty Media has been trying to expand into global motorsports, and of course they currently own Formula One. They own part of Sirius XM. I think they also own part of Meyer Shank Racing, and they own a lot of different companies and brandings currently at the moment. Now, this is definitely really unfortunate. Obviously, MotoGP is part of the FIA group, so it's a lot easier for MotoGP to get bought up by a company like Liberty Media than other things like NASCAR, IndyCar as well, because we all know there were a lot of rumblings that I think Liberty Media had been trying to buy NASCAR at one point a few years ago. I remember that rumor coming up and coming into play not too long ago, and now they're getting in and they're buying up MotoGP. It is unfortunate because I am worried that Liberty Media is going to hurt Formula One, because now you're probably going to have a lot of street courses probably coming into play. And I don't think a lot of people like street courses, and I'm not a big fan of adding as many street courses as possible, which I'm worried that is what is going to happen if they do come in and actually buy it. Overall, I'm not shocked by this move because, like I said, they are part of the FIA, so it's a lot easier for them to go and purchase something like this. But I'm not the happiest about this because I'm worried about the future of MotoGP. They've obviously announced a lot of big things. They've been trying to grow here in the United States. They're televising on True TV, among other networks, to try to grow MotoGP here in the U.S. And in general, I think they've been making some good decisions, but I'm not the biggest fan of MotoGP getting bought in from Liberty Media. I'm worried about the future, and I think it will unfortunately get affected because of this in the future of this company, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Taylor Gray. Now, it was reported by Joseph Zergley from TobyChristie.com that Taylor Gray is going to run 10 NASCAR Xfinity Series races in 2024 in the number 19 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. Taylor Gray will make his NASCAR Xfinity Series debut this weekend at Richmond International Raceway in the number 19 car, and expectations for Taylor are a little bit high. He's someone who I think is extremely talented and has been doing a really solid job in the Truck Series so far this year. I think he's currently in the top 5 in the standings, and I think he's had 3 or 4 top 5 so far in the 2024 Truck Series season, and I feel like he's about to start emerging and get that first career win. Now, obviously, this is a really amazing and great opportunity for Taylor, but I think we all have to be pretty realistic with his debut. I don't expect him to go out there and win because while the 19 car has shown some pace and speed at times, they've had top 10 and even top 5 speed at times, I don't think that they have the overall pace or speed to go out there and win a race. Realistically, for Taylor, I think the goal is to get some top 10s, maybe get a couple occasional top 5s, and maybe by the end of the year, if that 19 car continues to improve, maybe he can go out there and win some races by the end of the season in Xfinity. But realistically, I think top 10s should be the goal for Taylor, and also getting experience as well, because I think long-term Taylor could be a driver who is part of Joe Gibbs Racing's NASCAR Xfinity programs. I think he's one of the higher-up drivers in Toyota's TRD pipeline, and he'll be looking to run really, really well with this team in his select runs. I'm excited for him. I think he is going to do a really good job, and hopefully he can definitely make the best out of it for sure, because I think he is a very talented driver, and I do think he's got a really good chance and opportunity to perform with this team. Great opportunity for Taylor, and glad to see he'll at least get to run 10 races with Joe Gibbs Racing this season in 2024. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Conor Zillich. Now, there was a Spire Motorsports tweet that went out yesterday in regards to Conor Zillich. And this is something that he stated on the David Land channel when David Land interviewed him at the Sebring 12 Hours. If you haven't checked that interview out, I suggest you go check that out. But Conor Zillich said in this tweet that he wants to become the youngest Cup Series champion ever. And that's his ultimate goal. Now, Conor Zillich is currently under contract with Trackhouse Racing. He has a development deal with that organization and team. And he wants to become the youngest Cup Series champion ever. Now, for him to do that, he would have to beat Bill Rexford. Bill Rexford, who won the 1950 NASCAR Cup Series championship, was 23 years old. He is still to this day the youngest Cup Series champion. Conor Zillich, currently at the moment, is 17 years old, and he will turn 18 in, I believe, July or August of this year. He is going to turn 18 years old. But Conor Zillich, in my opinion, is one of the best up-and-coming prospects. You look at all the accomplishments that Conor's already had up to this point. He won his Sebring 12 Hours in the LMP2 class a couple weeks ago. He finished 4th in his debut, won the pole, got the track record, by the way, at Circuit of the Americas, and was probably going to win that race had it not been for the mistakes he had. But he would finish 4th, which is absolutely impressive regardless of how he ended up running. And then he's already won the LMP2 class in the Rolex 24, and he wants to go in even this year and win in the LMP2 class at the Le Mans 24 Hours. But certainly if you're an organization and team, if I'm an LMP1 team and one of the higher up hypercar organizations, I'm going after Conor Zillich right now and wanting him to run. I think Conor has all the possibilities and the opportunities in the world to complete this goal, and I do think that he will be a serious threat to get this done. I think he'll be in Cup in the next couple of years. One my early prediction. I think he's going to be full-time Cup by 2026 at the age of 19. I think he's going to be a full-time Xfinity driver next year, either with Junior Motorsports, maybe COG next year at 25. And I think he might make his Cup debut even this year at some point. But I do think for sure he'll make his Cup debut no later than 2025. And he'll be a full-time Cup driver by 2026. I think he's that good and he's that extremely talented. I think Conor's going to be a really successful driver in the sport. Nonetheless, I think he's going to do overall a pretty great job in his career. I think he is going to be the youngest. I think he's got a chance to do that, but he's going to have to beat some really big names. Luckily for him, I think he's got all the possibilities and all the opportunity here to complete that goal. I think he will be a serious threat and contender to get that done. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Shane Van Gisbergen. As it was officially announced and basically confirmed at the NASCAR Hall of Fame that there is a new exhibit at the NASCAR Hall of Fame celebrating the inaugural Chicago Street Course race with Shane Van Gisbergen's win. His fire suit, the trophy, among everything else, is now in that case. Obviously, the historic Chicago Street Course, the inaugural race that we ran last year, Shane Van Gisbergen came in his NASCAR Cup Series debut and was able to win that event, had fresh tires late, and made a really big switchback move on Justin Haley and beat drivers like Kyle Busch and Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott and Bubba Wallace, among other drivers who were really, really good in this event, and was able to score that win in his debut. And now you look at Shane Van Gisbergen's career, running full-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series at Kaulig Racing, running select starts at Kaulig Racing, and long-term wants to go full-time Cup Series racing as early as next season. And I think it's really amazing to see everything he's accomplished already up to this point. And I think it is a nice little gesture from the NASCAR Hall of Fame for them to do this, to know that SVG accomplished something not only amazing, but absolutely phenomenal and absolutely incredible. And I think to see that they're celebrating this, because I think this is absolutely a huge deal, not just for his career, but I think for the long-term future of his a racing career. I think this win is going to go down as one of the greatest accomplishments, because he became the first driver in 60 years to, by the way, accomplish this feat, to win in his debut. And for them to put up a Hall of Fame segment for him, I think is pretty awesome as well. So congratulations to him on this. I think it's amazing for him. And nonetheless, I think it's pretty awesome and cool to see that a new exhibit's been put up in front of his name. I think it's pretty awesome accomplishment for him. And like I said, congratulations to him on making this amazing and incredible accomplishment. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about EVs and something that Rick Hendrick said in regards to EVs. Now, there was an interview that he did, I think, with Road and Track recently, and he said that the customer is going to dictate what you build. I've been in the automobile business for almost 50 years, and you can't force customers to buy what they don't want. We were too aggressive with the EV market. This is definitely a very interesting take from Rick Hendrick, but I absolutely agree with Rick Hendrick 100% when it comes to EVs. There's been a huge push from a lot of car manufacturers over the course of the last few years of them trying to push EVs really for the last 5 years, and a lot of these car companies have been trying to push. You look at Chevy, you look at Honda, you look at all these major brands and companies, they are looking to try to push for the electronic vehicles. Here is the problem though. We have been pushing so aggressively, but the major problem is that it's not sustainable for the grid. The grid is not sustainable currently at the moment. I know that the government and other entities are trying to find a way to make EVs a lot more sustainable long term, but I just think right now that they've been pushing way too much into the EV market as quick as possible, and I don't think the grid is sustainable currently at the moment. Now, could it happen in the next 5 to 10 years? Yes, absolutely, but you look at a lot of these car companies like recently, you look at Chevy, you look at Honda, you look at even Dodge, they're kind of backing away from going full electric, and they're going more to hybrid technologies, because one is a lot more sustainable and a lot easier to go with right now than going completely electric. I just think right now, when you look at the economy, how it's a little bit iffy at the moment right now, there's a lot more money you need for electronic vehicles. You have to charge the batteries, and it costs a lot of money to have a battery. You have to spend a lot of money, sometimes $1,000 just for a single battery in these cars. And I do believe that you can't just force people to go buy what they don't want to buy. You have to let it kind of play out with the market. I think a lot of people are starting to realize that hybrid technologies or hydrogen technologies, especially like NASCAR as well as looking at as well, I think they know it's a lot easier to go with something like that instead of going fully electric currently at the moment. So to me, I think it does make a lot of sense overall for them to go this way. You don't want to force somebody to do something that you don't want them to do. I think this is the right decision for the future, in my opinion. I think Rick Hendrick's absolutely right. I don't think we're going to be going fully electric into the future, but I think there will be some things that are going to happen to make this happen overall. So we'll see what happens in regards to the future when it comes to vehicles and electric technologies, among other things. But I do personally believe that the customer is really going to dictate what happens there. So it's interesting to see for sure, and we'll see how things play out. Nonetheless, I do 100% agree with Rick Hendrick that it has to be played out by how the customer decides it and how the economy goes, in my opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Cam Waters. Now, I did a video talking about this last night, but it was announced last night that Cam Waters will make his NASCAR debut next week at Martinsville Speedway, driving number 66 truck for ThorSport Racing. Now, there was rumor not too long ago that he was maybe make some select Cup Series starts with RFK Racing, which could still happen at some point in that Stage 60 car, but instead, he'll make his NASCAR debut in the Craftsman Truck Series with ThorSport Racing. ThorSport Racing, which is probably the biggest Ford team in the truck series currently at the moment, does not shock me or surprise me. Now, Cam Waters, for those who don't know who he is, he's an 11-time winner in the Supercar Series and does have some sprint car experience as well, to my understanding and to my knowledge. Now, he is someone who's been doing a really good job and one of the higher-up drivers, to my understanding, in the Ford development group as well, and been working with Ford in a pretty big way. He'll be joining a lot of drivers who driven for ThorSport Racing in the past, drivers like Hailie Deegan, who drove for this team. Kerry Earnhardt made starts with this organization and team. Now, what are my realistic expectations with Cam Waters? I don't know how much experience Cam Waters has on driving ovals. He's driven, of course, sprint cars, like I've mentioned, but I don't know how much experience he has racing on ovals. So realistically for Cam, I think the goal is to try to at least complete as many laps as possible and get as much experience, because I don't think it will be long before we see him make the transition over to NASCAR on a full-time basis. I wouldn't be surprised, because we know that Brody Kosecki's been interested in coming in to race in NASCAR, and we already know that Shane Van Gisbergen is transitioning over to NASCAR in a pretty big way. And I won't be surprised or shocked if we do end up seeing Cam Waters make some cup starts at some point this year. But realistically, going back to my expectations for Cam, I think that Cam Waters will contend for maybe a top 20 realistically and complete all the laps, because while, yes, ThorSport Racing is one of the biggest powerhouse organizations in the truck series, that 6.6 car has struggled a little bit. Now, I don't think that they'll have issues getting into the race. I think that 6.6 car is like 30th in the owner's points, so while it's a little bit of a danger zone, a little bit, I think it's in a pretty good position still at the moment. They're not running the truck full time. They're running it for majority races this year, so the 66 should be in a pretty good position throughout the rest of the year, and hopefully this means that Cam can make some more starts in NASCAR going in the future. But obviously his main focus is competing for the Supercars Championship and trying to win that championship this year, which with Brody's not running right now and Shane Van Gisbergen not running full-time in the series at all either, I think the future is a little bit unknown what's going to happen with Supercars, but I think Cam Waters will be the guy to beat for the championship, maybe outside of Will Brown. So we'll see what happens, but nonetheless, a really great opportunity for Cam, and I hope he can make the best of it. Glad to see he gets the chance and opportunity to make his NASCAR debut with ThorSport Racing. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Sammy Smith. As it was announced on Wednesday morning that Sammy Smith will be driving the 7 truck for Spire Motorsports for select races throughout the 2024 season. He'll make his season debut with them at Martinsville next weekend. Then he'll race in North Wilkesboro in May. Then he's going to race at Indianapolis Raceway Park in August. And then his last race will be at Milwaukee Mile in late August to early September. Sammy Smith currently competes full-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series with Junior Motorsports and has made one truck series start in the past in the number 17 truck for Tricon Garage, where I think he finished in the top 10 and had a really good chance and opportunity to win the truck series race last year at Daytona. Now, realistically, I think Sammy Smith is going to have a really strong chance and a great opportunity to win in the 7 truck. Kyle Busch has already scored a victory with this team at Atlanta Motor Speedway, and Kyle Busch has been pretty consistent and fast in the 7. We also have seen that the 71 truck of Roger Kroof go to victory and Nick Sanchez win. Spire has been the fastest organization in the truck series so far. I think Sammy Smith will be a major threat and a serious contender. Plus, he's got Brian Patty as a crew chief, which Brian Patty, in my opinion, is definitely one of the best crew chiefs that NASCAR has currently at this moment. So realistically, I think that Sammy Smith, ultimately the goal is to win. I think his goal is to try to win all 4 races, but there is a lot of good competition this year in the truck series. You're going to have Lane Riggs going for wins at that track at Martinsville. You're going to have Corey Heim, who's been off to an extremely impressive start so far. And I think going down, though, and running in the truck series to get a little more experience. I know trucks and Xfinity cars are completely different, but going down and running in the truck series to get more track time, I think isn't a thing that hurts someone. I think it's something that does help a driver grow as someone in the sport. So I'm excited for Sammy. I do think that Sammy Smith is going to be extremely competitive with Spire Motorsports, and I think he is absolutely going to make the best of it this season. Again, I'm just excited for him. I'm glad he's getting the chance and opportunity to work with Spire this year, a team that's been extremely successful. I think he will win at least 1 or even 2 races in trucks this year, but there still is a lot of steep competition at some of these races. I think Martinsville is going to be a really steep climb with a lot of great talent running there, but I do believe Sammy Smith will have a really great chance and a very strong opportunity to get his first truck series win of his career, which will continue to grow and climb the ladder as he also looks to win his first Xfinity Series championship this season in 2024. I think he's got a good chance and opportunity to that, and nonetheless glad to see that he will be going to run some truck series races this year in 2024. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Long Beach. Now, over the last couple days, really since Monday or Tuesday, there have been a lot of chatter that the Kevin Kalkoven 50% estate that they had owned, the estate of Kevin Kalkoven. Unfortunately, Kevin Kalkoven sadly passed away. There's been a lot of chatter that NASCAR had been trying to pursue and buy the 50% ownership stake that Kevin Kalkoven's group had owned. And Penske Entertainment Group in IndyCar had been trying to block that. While NASCAR's pursuit, it looks like to go to Long Beach or buy the 50% ownership stake, has sadly ended. Because it was announced yesterday and reported by Marshall Pruitt from Racer.com that Jerry Forsythe, who owned the original 50%, has bought the remaining 50% stake owned by the late Kevin Kalkoven's estate. And he also basically kind of confirmed that this is an IndyCar event. For those who don't know who Jerry Forsythe is, Jerry Forsythe was one of the creators and owners of the kart series and was the owner of the Champ Car series for a very long time and didn't really race in IndyCar. But he knows that this is an IndyCar event and he wanted to make it and keep it an IndyCar event going into the forward. Now, why is this significant? Well, obviously, like I just mentioned a second ago, NASCAR had been trying their best to try to go ahead and buy it up. Well, obviously, now we know that that is not going to be happening, we'll talk about NASCAR's pursuit to Long Beach. As much as I think a lot of us would have absolutely loved NASCAR to go in there and be the owners of the Long Beach Grand Prix, at least as us NASCAR fans, I think for motorsports' sake, this is a huge win for IndyCar. Because in my personal opinion, if IndyCar would have lost Long Beach, especially with everything going on, the rumors of Honda potentially leaving IndyCar currently at the moment. I think if they would have lost the Long Beach Grand Prix, I think it would have been a massive dark cloud for IndyCar as a whole. And I think it would have been a dark cloud for motorsports fans because IndyCar and kart have had the Long Beach Grand Prix for nearly 40 years. So if they would have lost the Long Beach Grand Prix, it would have been a massive and major loss. Now, like I said, everyone knows my opinion is I do want to see NASCAR race at Long Beach, but I don't want to see it IndyCar sacrifice for that. Because IndyCar's been having a lot of turmoil. There's been a lot of bad stuff going on. The ratings have not been good. Like I mentioned, Honda's been threatening to back out. I know they're doing a hybrid test today at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but still, I just feel like there's been a lot of stuff going on against IndyCar, and I think for the first time in a long time, there's been something good going on. It's a little bit of a surprise for a lot of people in IndyCar, considering that Jerry Forsythe has never really raced IndyCar, was never a big fan of IndyCar to begin with, but he knows that this is an IndyCar event, and he wanted to make sure that it reserved for an IndyCar event going forward. Now, what does this mean for NASCAR's quest to race at Long Beach? I don't think that this is completely the end of NASCAR's opportunity to go and race at Long Beach in the future, but I think the chances of them racing at Long Beach, at least in 2025, have gone from, yeah, there's definitely a decent chance and a possibility that this could happen, to, at this point, probably very slim to none, probably like 25 to 30% likely that it does happen, because the city of Long Beach really plays a role in who gets to race there. Yes, it's a real racetrack, in my opinion. It is a real street course, and Long Beach really loves the Long Beach Grand Prix for IndyCar, but I don't know if they're going to let NASCAR race there, and I think for NASCAR, especially with how big the cars are, you would have to make some different type of track, which honestly NASCAR could easily do. It's not like the track can't be like changed. They easily can make a different layout for the track. I know that a lot of drivers would love to probably go around the fountain, but I think it would be really hard for NASCAR to race there. So I think there is a chance long-term for NASCAR going there, but I think as of right now, especially in the short-term future, I think it's really kind of hard because you think about the future of NASCAR, because NASCAR wants to stay in the Southern California area. And so secret, they want to stay in that area of the country. The problem is that there's not a lot of tracks available. You had Long Beach that was definitely on the possibility of happening, but it looks like right now that that is not going to happen because of them of IndyCar and Jerry Forsythe buying out. Now, Jerry Forsythe could screw everybody over and just not let it happen, but he's going to give it to IndyCar, and he's going to basically take over the reins of it being an IndyCar and IMSA event because IMSA's already there, which NASCAR does have a presence in a way because NASCAR does technically own IMSA. But the question will be, because it's a bad move for at least a little bit of bad luck for Penske Entertainment Group, because it wasn't Penske who saved it. It was Jerry Forsythe's group who kind of went in there and saved that event. But NASCAR is in a really difficult position because they got to figure out whether they're going to race Southern California, because they're likely not going back to the Coliseum. They could still go back there next year, but there's a lot of rumors that they're not going back to the LA Coliseum next year, and people in the industry don't expect them to go back. A lot of people think it's going to go to Mexico next year. Some even think it could go to like MetLife Stadium. People have mentioned that at one point. And then you think about some other possibilities as well of what NASCAR could race. Sure, you've got Auto Club, but it ain't going to be ready next year. We've gotten confirmation from Dave Alpern, or the guy who runs the stuff in Southern California. He kind of confirmed that is not happening at this particular point. And then it's time to be ready for 25, so you got to wait till 2026 at least. And then you've got other factors that are coming into play there. So in general, I do think NASCAR is going to have a hard time racing. Irwindale could be a possibility. I know Dodger Stadium's been brought up, but I don't think Dodger Stadium is going to be ready. I think Irwindale will be a good option, but will they do it? I don't know at this point. That's the big question, right? I think it's kind of unknown what is going to happen at this particular moment with the future of Southern California and racing there. I hope they do race in Southern California next year, but it's going to be really tough for them to race. But at the same token, same time, as much as I would love NASCAR to race at Long Beach, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, I don't want them to sacrifice the Long Beach Grand Prix for IndyCar, because it would have been a massive and major loss for IndyCar and motorsports as a whole if it was lost to NASCAR. So I think this is the right decision overall. As much as I would love to see NASCAR race there, I think this is the correct decision, especially for the future and the sake of motorsports as a whole. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about a pretty massive rumor going around in the industry. Now, it was reported by Couch Racer, I believe on Monday or Tuesday, that there are at least 2 Tier 1 NASCAR Cup Series teams that are looking to expand in 2025. This account is managed by Brett Griffin and Freddie Kraft from Dirty Mo Media and the Door Bumper Clear podcast. And Freddie Kraft stated on Door Bumper Clear that it is teams that currently have 2 cars. That narrows it down because Hendrick Motorsports is not going to expand from 4 cars. And we know that Joe Gibbs Racing, they're not expanding. So you can narrow those 2 teams off the market. But it's no secret that there's a lot of teams and organizations that do want to expand. But if you want to expand your program, you have to have charters available. Because if you want to go full-time racing, they mentioned this in the tweet as well, you need charters. Now, what organizations could be looking to expand and what organizations could be looking to sell? Let's start off with the teams that could sell their charters. I think there are 3 or 4 organizations that might sell their charter at the end of this year. The first one is Stewart-Haas Racing. There has been a lot of chatter that Stewart-Haas Racing is going to leave Ford at the end of 2024. And they might be headed over to Chevrolet. Or they could stay with Ford, but they may not be a Tier 1 organization. But many people like Jordan Bianchi in the industry reported a few weeks ago, stated that it sounds like that Stewart-Haas Racing more than likely is going to leave Ford at the end of the 2024 season. And some are expecting they may go to Chevrolet on a 1-year deal. And then if Honda comes into play, they may end up going there. But currently with the deal they have with Ford right now, they are required to have 4 charters. If they leave Ford, they may downsize. And I think that affects a driver like Chase Briscoe, because Chase Briscoe's been with Ford for a very, very long time. So he might be let go. But they have had opportunities to pick up drivers, and obviously SHR has been struggling in recent years. There's been a lot of frustration. Front Row just got announced to Tier 1 team. I think there's a good chance that they leave. They had opportunities to get drivers like, Kyle Larson, Kyle Busch, Haley Deegan at one point, I think, Matt Benedetto. You think about other drivers like SVG was mentioned at one point as a possibility. You had opportunities for Zane Smith and Michael McDowell, other drivers. If they didn't go after them, I think SHR is one of those teams that may downsize. The next team that may downsize is Kaulig Racing. Kaulig Racing is an organization that built themselves up way too quickly. While their Xfinity Series program has always been good, they've struggled in Cup. AJ Allmendinger has been the only driver to win for the team in Cup, and they've been struggling this year. And you look at that 16 car, especially at the moment. They've had Shane Van Gisbergen, AJ Allmendinger. They've had, of course, Ty Dillon, who's running for the team this year. Matt Benedetto was almost going to drive for this team at one point this year. They've had Derek Kraus run for the team, and Josh Williams. And there might be more drivers who get to drive for the 16 car. I think this 16 car is the charter that would likely go for Kaulig Racing, and they give it to another organization we're going to talk about here in a little bit that might get this charter. But I think they're a team that might downsize their program. I just think it makes way too much sense. Kaulig has been struggling, and I think a lot of people think that they're going to sell a charter at the end of the year. Despite Chris Rice saying they're not going to, I think they are going to sell a charter at the end of this year. The next team that might sell is Spire Motorsports. Spire Motorsports has currently 3 charters and 3 full-time entries, but they're a team that's been pretty proactive in the charter market. So certainly, I think that they are a team that might end up selling to like a team like Trackhouse, perhaps. So that could be a possibility. I think Spire's in the running. And then the final team I mentioned is Rickware Racing. I think RWR is in the running for one organization to sell a charter to. I don't think they want to sell, but I think they're the least likely to. But I think that they're a team to watch out for, especially if a driver like Justin Haley was to go over a team like RFK, because we know Brad Keselowski's really pushing to try to get Justin Haley over at RFK Racing. But I think that's kind of a tough move for them to happen. So we'll see if Rickware does make that decision. But now you got to look at the money situation. Charter agreement has still not been finalized at this moment, and there still is an unknown if the charter agreement is going to be around. But I do think, and everyone's expecting it at this point, that a charter agreement is going to get finalized in the not-so-distant future. So I think it will get done, and something to watch for there too. But let's talk about teams that might expand or even come into the Cup Series, because I think there's some organizations outside that might join the Cup Series. So there are 4 teams, in my opinion, that are in the running to get a charter next year. The first organization is 2311 Racing. It's no secret that Denny Hamlin wants to expand 2311 Racing to a 3 to 4 car organization. And Denny Hamlin stated recently that he doesn't want to run full time at this point with the team, but he wants to race at some point with 2311 Racing. Now, they have opportunities. There are some drivers in Toyota Racing's pipeline they can go get. You have Chandler Smith driving full-time with Joe Gibbs Racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, so I do think that we may see him go to Joe Gibbs Racing if Mark Truex Jr. does end up retiring. You also have Corey Heim, who is reserve driver for 2311 Racing this year. And you've also got other drivers like Kurt Busch, Carl Edwards come out of retirement and race. That certainly could be a possibility. But I think Corey Heim, and then even Sheldon Creed could be a possibility. Even Eric Almirola could be a possibility when it comes to expansion. But I do believe that 2311 Racing is one of those teams that definitely wants to expand to 3 to 4 entries. And they've been dabbling with the third entry. They're going to run the 50 car 2 more times this year. Kamui Kobayashi drove the 50, and we know they're going to run that car at least 2 more times this year. I wouldn't be surprised if Corey Heim makes one of those starts at some point this year. But I do believe that 2311 Racing is one of those organizations, and I think they're wanting to expand. The next organization that could expand is Trackhouse Racing. I think they're one of the 2 big key teams that might end up expanding. Trackhouse Racing has a lot of drivers, but not enough charters. Right now, they have 2 full-time drivers. They have 4 or 5 drivers under contract with Trackhouse and only 2 seats. Ross Chastain in the 1 car, he's not going anywhere. He's been performing extremely good with Trackhouse, has 4 wins over the course of the last 2 seasons. I don't see Ross Chastain going anywhere anytime soon. Daniel Suarez is in a contract year with Trackhouse Racing. We know that Justin Marks really wants to keep Daniel Suarez around, but if push comes to shove and you've got to sell a charter and move someone in, Daniel Suarez could be the guy that goes, unfortunately, but I think he wants to stay. You got Shane Van Gisbergen, who's full-time in Xfinity, who might go full-time Cup racing next year, especially if his performance being as good as it has been. I think he definitely could be a driver to watch for to go full-time next year, and I think he certainly will likely go full-time next year. And then you have Zane Smith, who I think will be full-time with Trackhouse next year. He's under contract with Trackhouse, and he's working with Spire Motorsports, but I think he's going to be a full-time Cup driver next year. And then you got Conor Zillich, who we've already talked about, who wants to move up to Cup in the future and wants to be the youngest Cup Series champion. So he certainly could be one to watch. I think Trackhouse is the first major team. The next team that might expand is RFK Racing. RFK Racing is no secret they want to expand. They're looking to go to IMSA. There was a lot of chat they're going to go to Xfinity this year, though that did not end up happening. They want to have an Xfinity program at some point. But Brad Keselowski says the first big goal is to open up a third full-time team next year. Obviously, you got to have money for that. And Brad does have a little bit of funding coming in from the Fenway Group, among other things. So certainly they could get a charter. And I think that goes from Rick Ware. I think that they're going to try to bring Justin Haley in. I think that's a goal for RFK. And certainly I think Justin Haley is the most likely to make the move over to Roush. And I think they could get that charter from Rick Ware, but they could get other drivers like Haley Deegan and some other drivers like Ty Majeski perhaps to drive the safety car. That certainly could be a possibility as well. And then finally, you have Richard Childress Racing. RCR, in my opinion, is a sleeper cell when it comes to who could join into the Cup Series with a third full-time entry. Right now, you have Austin Hill and Kyle Busch who are driving full-time in Cup. But they are looking to run a third car at some point this year. Brett Griffin revealed that it's unclear who will be driving in that third car this year. But they are planning to run the Chicago Street Course, in my understanding. Maybe Brody Kosecki or somebody else. We don't know at this point. But we do know they're planning to run a third car in select races. And you have Austin Hill who's waiting in the wings, and you also have Jesse Love who's waiting in the wings as well, who could go full-time Cup racing. Now, obviously, there's a chance that we may say Austin Hill retire in the coming years, and Austin Hill takes over the 3-car in the future, which I don't think is going to happen until 2026. But I think RCR is definitely a team that is in the running to pick up another charter. So who gets the charters at this point? Well, I think that the 3 big teams that are likely going to pick up the charters are, right now, I think RFK, 2311, and Trackhouse. I think those are the 3 big teams that are looking to massively expand. I think they're the 3 that could end up getting the charters next year. The other teams that could make some moves in regards to the charter market, I think the Stewart-Haas Racing is going to sell a charter. I think with their rumors of them leaving Ford at the end of the year, I think that they're going to basically sell one of their charters. The next team that I think will sell is going to be Spire. I think their charter goes over to Trackhouse Racing. The next team that sells, in my opinion, could end up being a team like Collie, and I think they sell a charter to Trackhouse. I think Trackhouse could be a 4-car organization next season, and I think that they are absolutely going to expand. So my prediction right now is that we're going to see Trackhouse with 4 full-time entries next year, with SVG and Zane going full-time. I think that SHR sells their charter over to 2311 perhaps, or RFK Racing. That certainly could be a possibility, and I think RFK may end up expanding. It's something to watch for as time goes on, and if a new manufacturer comes in perhaps, we might see more charters come into play. It'll be fun to watch this as silly season goes on, but a charter agreement still does have to be finalized at this point. So, that is going to be today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Links description below, then comment your thoughts below on today's video. What teams do you think are going to expand in 2025? Let me your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about Long Beach not being bought by NASCAR? You think it's great for motorsports or not? Let me your thoughts in the comments below. There might be a second video dropping on the channel today, but I'm not entirely sure at this point. Tomorrow on the channel, we're going to have a lot of videos dropping with the Xfinity Series race and some other news as well. And then on Sunday, we're going to have the Cup Series race review and the starting lineup video for the NASCAR Cup Series race as well. And then Monday, there might be a news video dropping as well. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.